I think a really interesting trend I've started to see appear on my YouTube feed is commentary channels always embracing this doomer ideology. To be fair to the current events of the world, I can understand why this may be an easy thought process to adapt. I just find it interesting to see such a large community of people commiserating in the same idea despite being in completely different sectors of the world or country. Whether this be concerns about going to war, collapsing economies, human rights, or a global Illuminati, fear grabs. Now, in respect to the technology and systems we interact with every day that are constantly fighting for our attention, I pose that our devices, intentionally or unintentionally, are the main drivers with this obsession of sadness. Albeit one of the greatest inventions of human history, I believe the echo chamber that these devices serve and the algorithms that are intended to take advantage of our weaknesses as humans reinforce and preserve this sadness. Did that sound smart? I started to write this script like a paper, and I'm kind of realizing nobody cares about the fluffy language, so forgive me as I dial this in. The first video that comes to mind when I wanted to create this video has been one that's been consistently rolling around in my recommended feed about a job interview. It's aptly titled, "I'm going to be unemployed forever." It's your standard commentary video about someone's life experience. They highlight the brutal honesty of the job market, the genuine disrespect these large companies display to their candidates, because frankly of how disposable applicants are. It's something I initially dismissed as just another person displaying their struggles on the internet and not really having the mental capacity to try and include another human's life into my headspace. Yes, the job market is horrible, we all know this, but making a YouTube video telling everyone how bad it is doesn't really fix anything. And then finally, after YouTube's fourth recommendation, I obviously watched the video. The content was what I just described, but the observation I found to be the most interesting was the comments. Of course, you had the overwhelming agreement amongst people that the job market is horrible, but I found what jumped out to me the most was the bitter anger these comments were written with. Not only the bitterness within the popular comments, but the weird race to the bottom you can find within the replies, where everyone has it worse than the other, and even if you're struggling, you're lucky for X number of reasons you weren't or were aware of, and so it begins this really cyclical cycle in my mind, where any achievement you achieve shouldn't be recognized as one because you're lucky or stood on the shoulders of others in order to achieve it. Then, if you aren't achieving anything, you're either seen as lazy or that this was a self-fulfilled prophecy of failure. It's just always this fight of who has it worse, or I'm curious, when will we all just get exhausted? This isn't me to disparage or devalue this YouTuber story and the experience of those found within these comments. I fully believe and understand how terrible the US job market is, but that is not the problem I'm really trying to tackle within this video. I want to try and understand where this deep distaste for life comes from and why this communal confession has become so commonplace. Where did the desire to point to your values and highlight why life is so bad become the common practice? I equally understand we cannot ignore the bad in our life, but finding the silver lining to things is met with eye rolls and comments of, "You don't understand." When in reality, people can probably understand 85% of the scenario and miss what you're hyperfixated on, and then you just throw out their entire opinion. I'm just exhausted from this mutual desire to be negative. And I'm not an ignorantly positive person. I will not look at a tragedy, horrible situation, or a mistake and try to wrap a soft bow around it. I will engage and understand the challenge facing me, and I know many others do the exact same thing I do. I feel like where the disconnect happens, though, is this idea of ruminating on that tragedy or mistake. It is so incredibly easy to be sad, and as seen within any human condition, we will choose the easiest route. So when you can point at something and say it's unfair or the deck is stacked against you, then of course it's easy to stop playing the game entirely. The game being life in this context, but pun is not intended. So I am not saying this to be ignorantly positive or to be stoic to a degree where you cannot process scenarios around you, but I am saying that although it's everyone's experiences and not necessarily wrong for you to feel similar, it is wrong for you to fall into that self-defeating mindset. It's like that stupid Einstein quote, where if you measure a fish's ability to climb a tree, it will think it's dumb for the rest of its life. If you measure the quality of your life in comparison to others, for better or worse, it will always feel worse. And that's why I fall into the camp of comparison being the thief of joy. No matter what accomplishment you have out in the ether, there will always be someone who has it better or worse. This particular point is why I think phones and devices can be so deadly to our mental health. I know. Breaking news. It turned out to be the damn phone. But I think this can be seen in more subversive ways. I see it with the Caleb Hammer show, or those videos you see of I'm X years old and I'm a complete failure, where the entire dialogue and content of the video is just for you to watch someone that is obviously struggling and be able to say, oh, thank God I'm not them. Obviously, I fall into this crowd too, and I completely understand why others do as well. When you feel like the loser all the time, oddly enough, it feels good to see someone else lose as much or even a little more. It's like with addicts when they try to cope with their abuse issues. At least I'm not trying a 12-pack today. Is now, oh, at least I'm full-time, or at least I'm only behind on one card, or whatever other cope we have all heard or said to ourselves. I'm not here to point at any of this behavior as wrong. It's all human. I just think we're in a really unique period of time in which this human behavior is magnified to a degree we've never experienced. That because of this magnification, we now see a more extreme split between two groups. This is where I see the younger generation drowning in debt but feeling rightly taken advantage of. We can also see the opposite group in likely a similar amount of debt but adopting this red pill to grind set attitude. Both extremes, both more common, both contributing to this aspect of the center being drowned out. What is my solution? That's what I pay my taxes for. But really, I don't think there's a simple one that could be applied across the population, but it'd have to come from an individual drive. At this point, technology and our phones are here to stay for the long term. I think it's how we use the tools and information at the palms of our hands that will contribute to how our perspective will shift towards the world. I'm purely just a dude talking to a box that is broadcasting to another box that is then talking to you. So take everything I say haphazardly. I just wish we could embrace a more positive perspective without it feeling fabricated or leveraged in some monetary way. Things don't need to be divided as they are, but I can also understand the events that cause it to be this way. I believe the best way to combat this problem is to be aware of the humanistic pitfalls of sadness and to be ready to combat them with the hard path of happiness. Hope this somewhat made sense. Thank you.